Good evening and welcome to Sports Night in Auburn. I'm Kennedy Gooden.
And I'm Shelby Anderson. Tonight we've got a recap of the first two rounds of March Madness and much more, so keep it right here on Eagle Eye TV.
Auburn's men's basketball has been the story of March. The team has made it to the Sweet 16 in the NCAA tournament for the first time in 16 years, and Coach Bruce Pearl and the rest of his Auburn Tigers team has the confidence that they can take on anyone in their path.
Pearl said, "We're awfully excited to have advanced to the Sweet 16. It's the fifth time in Auburn basketball history that we have managed to do that. Just know that we are grateful, all of us, for the opportunity to represent Auburn in this kind of competition." Let's take a look at how the Tigers got here.
Auburn started the tournament as a 5 seed in the Midwest region, a region that many call the toughest of the 4 teams, as like North Carolina, Kentucky, Houston, and Kansas also drew seeds in this region.
Auburn's first game in the tournament would be a matchup with New Mexico State Aggies, a team boasting a record of 30-5 and resembling Auburn in their sense of play style. Now, this game was back and forth the whole way, with the biggest story being a name many Auburn fans wouldn't have thought to be a hero. No, it wasn't Bryce Brown or Jared Harper, although their contributions were needed. Javon McCormick came off the bench and scored 16 points to help put the game away in the second half, as his work at the free throw line paid off and gave Auburn the lead they needed to survive and advance with a final score of 78-77.
Looking at some other notable round of 64 games, unlike last year, none of the 1 seeds were upset, so Duke, Gonzaga, Virginia, and North Carolina all moved on.
In the East region, the notable games included Liberty, which upset 5-seeded Mississippi State as a 12 seed. 6-seed Maryland defeated 11-seed Belmont, even though many had the Bruins moving far along in the tournament. LSU was able to defeat Yale, Michigan State beat Bradley, and UCF took down VCU. Many brackets were busted by the first game of the day as Minnesota defeated Louisville by 10.
In the South, Oklahoma took down Ole Miss in the tough 8-9 matchup. Oregon would play the 12-5 upset over Wisconsin. UC Irvine would upset 4th-seeded Kansas State. Villanova and Purdue would take care of their matchups respectively, and Iowa, along with 2-seed Tennessee, would defeat their matchups in a road to the next round.
Moving to the West region, after top-seeded Gonzaga took care of their matchup, Baylor played a spoiler in many people's eyes, taking down 8-seeded Syracuse. In another 12-5 upset, Murray State took down Marquette behind the stellar play of future NBA player Ja Morant. Florida State took down Vermont, while Buffalo and Texas Tech handled their matchups, and Florida, along with Michigan, set themselves up in the second round.
Lastly, in the Midwest, Washington won the 8-9 matchup, while Auburn and Kansas took down their opponents in Salt Lake City. Ohio State upset the Big 12 champs in Iowa State, and Houston took down Georgia State, while Fletcher McGee and Wofford took down Seton Hall to set up a matchup with Kentucky after their first-round win.
The round of 32 put Auburn in a school still on the rise in college basketball world against a blue-collar powerhouse in Kansas.
But sometimes new kids on the block really are the ones you should be saying, "Baby, I believe in you too." Auburn got out quick and outscored the Jayhawks 34-8 in fast break points for the game. The Tigers executed one of the more flawless first halves in recent tournament history en route to 51-26 first half lead.
Bryce Brown proves why he is the best three-point shooter in Auburn's history, connecting on 7 from 11 from downtown as he scored 25 points and led the way for the Tigers, who as a team shot 13 for 30 from behind the arc. Jared Harper also threw in 18 points, and Chuma Okeke contributed 12 of his own as the Tigers would win by a final of 89-75 and move on to the Sweet 16 for the first time since 2003.
On to the rest of the round of 32. Starting in the East, Duke barely squeaked out a win by 1 against UCF after an R.J. Barrett put back with just seconds left would prove to be the difference needed, while Virginia Tech handled their matchup a little more one-sided, winning by 9 against 12-seeded Liberty. On the other side of the East, Michigan State would blow out 10-seeded Minnesota, while their matchup for the Sweet 16, LSU, would play a back-and-forth game against Maryland, where Tremont Waters' layup would prove to be the difference as LSU would win by 2.
Moving to the South, Virginia would handle Oklahoma and would go on to win by 12, while Oregon handled UC Irvine in a battle of the low seeds. While on the other side, Purdue and Carson Edwards would knock the reigning champs out after Edwards' 42 points propelled the Boilermakers over Villanova, and it took overtime, but the 2-seeded Tennessee Volunteers handled Iowa by a final of 83-77.
In the West, top seed Gonzaga took down Baylor and Florida State took down Ja Morant and Murray State despite his huge game, while Texas Tech made the Buffalo Bulls look like Buffalo chicken, winning by 20, and Michigan would handle Florida as the Gators didn't even crack 50 points.
With the win against Kansas, Auburn moves to the final 16 teams in the tournament. Auburn has a tough matchup as they face the 1-seed North Carolina, with the game set to tip off at 6:30 on Friday on TBS.
North Carolina opens as a 5-point favorite early, but the Tigers are used to being the underdogs. They were underdogs against Tennessee. They were underdogs against Tennessee in the SEC tournament final, and this is no new thing for these Tigers. Auburn is averaging 80 points per game, while the Tar Heels average 86 and only allow 66. Both teams shot the ball between 45 and 46% from the field, so don't let the numbers by the team names fool you. This is a closer game than a lot of people think.
Let's look at the rest of the Sweet 16 as there are a lot of good matchups.
Top overall seed Duke will take on Virginia Tech, while on the other side of the East, LSU will battle with Michigan State, and on the south side, Virginia will take on 12-seed Oregon, and Purdue will face SEC tournament runner-up Tennessee.
In the West, 1-seed Gonzaga meets with 4-seed Florida State, and Texas Tech has a date with the Wolverines with Michigan. And in the Midwest, the matchup we've already spoken on, Auburn will take on top region seed North Carolina, and 3-seed Houston will see 2-seeded Kentucky. Coming up, our sports director Hayden Desmond will break down how he sees the Sweet 16 going, and you won't want to miss it. So you're watching Sports Night in Auburn.
Get it.
Get it.
Get it.
Get it.
Get it.
Is she gonna get it, Daddy?
She'll get it.
Get it. Get it.
When you bring home a Goodwill find, you give your whole town a reason to celebrate because you're also funding local job training and placement programs in tech, healthcare, and more. Goodwill. Bring good home.
Welcome back to Sports Night in Auburn. My name is Hayden Desmond, and last week we broke down the entire bracket and tried to give you the best tips in order to help you win amongst your office or your friend groups. But this week, after my bracket is towards the bottom of our office group, I'll be taking a look at the easier Sweet 16 and giving my prediction on where I think the tournament is going to go from here. So the first game that we're going to take a look at, number 1 overall seeded Duke against the 4-seeded ACC opponent, Virginia Tech. I think Virginia Tech's playing really well in the tournament so far. They've kind of gotten lucky with their draws in their first and second round matchups, but I really don't see them giving Duke as much of a problem as some people are saying they are. I am going to pick Duke to go in this one. I think the Blue Devils are rolling. I think that even though they had a slip-up, as some would say, against UCF, I think that they're kind of starting to hit. I don't have them as my national champs. That is one thing that we're going to get to that is kind of big in my office and at least in my brackets. I don't think they're going to be the national champs, but we'll get to that in just a second. The second game that we're going to look at is LSU and Michigan State. They'll be headed on to face the top-seeded Blue Devils. Now, LSU in their game against Maryland played very well. That was a very back-and-forth game if you watched it. Tremont Waters came up big in the end, and that's why they were only able to win by 2. I think Maryland was kind of underrated coming in to the tournament. I, for one, as you guys watched last week, picked Belmont to beat them. But I think that LSU is coached really well, and their situation is kind of interesting with Will Wade not being in there to coach his guys, even though he wants to because of the NCAA violations. Now, on the other side, I think Michigan State is they're firing on all cylinders. They're going into the tournament at the right time, coming off their Big Ten tournament performance. Tom Izzo is playing really well with his guys like Cassius Winston, and who's potentially one of the best players in the country and is going to make a lot of money in the NBA someday. I think he has great court vision, and he does what he needs to do in order to put his guys in position to win. That's both Izzo and Cassius Winston. This is kind of a toss-up for me, but knowing what I know about these two teams and where I think that the tournament could go, I am going to pick LSU over this one. I am going to go with the lower seed for this matchup. Now we're going to move on to the next region, Gonzaga and Florida State. I really don't see this being any trouble. I know Florida State kind of handed it to Murray State and John Morant, but I think Gonzaga is going to come out with this one pretty easily, even though they don't play in such of a strong conference, and their first few games really have been cakewalks for them. I see Gonzaga being the team that comes out on top in that matchup. Now, this matchup is one of the ones that I'm very excited to watch, Texas Tech and Michigan. I'm going to go ahead and tell you who I want to win. That's right, Wolverines. I think the Wolverines are playing really well right now. I love what they're doing, spreading the ball across the floor. They're hitting big shots. They're not missing the shots that they're taking. They're moving the ball really well, getting their guys open. Guys like Jordan Poole playing exceptional. He's on my all-tournament team. I think that he's doing very well so far in this tournament, and I don't see the Texas Tech guys. Now, if you watch that Buffalo game, Texas Tech can score a lot of points against the top team. Texas Tech had 3-pointers, 2-pointers, dunks, layups, long shots, mid-range. Any shot on the floor that they wanted, they got. And I think that'll be key against this Michigan team that plays very solid defense. If Texas Tech can get their shots, it's going to be a close game. But I do see the Wolverines coming out on top. Now, moving on to the top seed in Virginia and the lowest seed that we have remaining, 12, Oregon. Now, these Oregon Ducks, I love them. They play fast. They won the Pac-12. Nobody really picked them to have a chance against Wisconsin, but I did. And I'm just going to plug my bracket right there. They beat 13 UC Irvine, who upset K-State in the first round in the battle of the lower seeds in the round of 32. I'm going to pick them to upset Virginia. And I know that that's one thing that not a lot of people are really looking at. They're going to look at Virginia to be the team that sort of goes on after the upset last year. But Virginia made it out of the first round this year. They're a very good defensive team. They're full of weapons, and everything that they can do across the board is very good, and they're coached very well. But I think this Oregon team is our Cinderella this year. You know, they're a 12 seed, even though they're coming from the Pac-12. They're tournament champs. They're not a 12 seed. They play fast, they play together as a team, and they force turnovers and don't commit them. They're averaging 7.6 steals before coming into the tournament, and that was one of their biggest things against Wisconsin that really helped them. Now, we're going to move on to this matchup, which I find very interesting. It is the third-seeded Purdue Boilermakers and Carson Edwards, who just dropped 42 on the reigning champs. If y'all didn't watch that game, 9 3-pointers. He was going through a shooting slump, and if that's a shooting slump, like, I want to be on that when I go play pickup in the gym. Now, here's the deal with this one. Purdue, Tennessee. Tennessee, complete team. One of the most complete teams in the country. Guys like Admiral Schofield, Grant Williams, point guard Jordan Bone, who might be the fastest player in the SEC, might be one of the fastest players in the country. I'm going to give it to Tennessee, and here's why. Tennessee plays more as a team. If you look at Purdue's team stats, Carson Edwards averaged up before the tournament somewhere around 23 points per game, and I think their next guy averaged right around 12. So I think Tennessee, with their complete ball play and style that Rick Barnes, who likes to play, is going to be one thing that really, really projects them into the next round and puts them against the 12-seeded Oregon Ducks. Now, this is the big matchup, especially here on the Plains. We have the 1-seed North Carolina out of the Midwest region and the 5-seed Auburn Tigers. Now, this is going to be the game of the tournament. I'm saying it right now. This game is going to be better than any national championship game we get. It's going to be one of the most fun that you're going to watch all tournament long, all March long. Auburn plays exceptionally well on fast break points. I believe in the first half alone. No, for the game, they outscored Kansas on fast break points 34-8. 34-8. Do I need to say it again? 34-8. If Auburn can get out there and get their shots, Bryce Brown is on 9 for 13 from beyond the arc, or 7 for 13 from beyond the arc against Kansas. That's not something that you see every day. That's a testament to his work ethic and everything that he's doing right here on the Plains. I'm gonna roll with the upset here. I am going to take Auburn to upset North Carolina. I think that that's definitely something that's within the realm of possibility. Before the tournament, I was more scared about the New Mexico State game versus the Kansas game for Auburn, and I proved to be right, as Auburn only beat New Mexico State by 1 and ran Kansas out of the gym. And that's not to take anything away from the Jayhawks. They had a great season, even though they're not winning the Big 12 title like they're used to doing for the last 14, 15 years. Moving on to the last game of the Sweet 16, we have third-seeded Houston and Corey Davis Jr. against 2-seed John Calipari's Kentucky Wildcats. This Kentucky team is playing still without P.J. Washington. There's no word on if he's going to get the go-ahead for their game this weekend. But I don't think it matters. I think that Houston is more complete, and they have more guys that are experienced and that can score the basketball. That's going to really take them into the next round. Now, we're going to keep going through the Elite Eight, and I'm going to look at this Duke-LSU matchup. I don't really see LSU giving Duke that much of a problem. I know they have guys like Naz Reid who can spread the floor, but I am going to take Duke. I think after their win against Virginia Tech, they're going to have a little more confidence and be playing with a little bit more swagger to them. I know Krzyzewski doesn't really always like to have for his teams to have swagger, but with this group of guys, you're going to need everything that you can get going into the third round, and that's going to lead them right into the Final Four. Now, this Gonzaga-Michigan game I think is going to be very interesting. These teams play a very similar style, especially on the offensive side of the ball. They like to move the ball around. They like to get the best shot they can, and even when they don't have the best shots, their shots are going in. But Gonzaga's up and down each year. I know that they've been Final Four bound, national championship bound in recent years, but I think that this is really going to be a Michigan team that is just going to play really well. Jordan Poole, like I mentioned earlier, is one of the best players in the country. I think that he is going to lead these Wolverines. Behind the coaching of Michigan's head coach, I think that they're going to play very well, and I think that it's going to be a close game, don't get me wrong, but I think that Michigan's going to come out on top there. Now we're going to go to 12-2. Nobody really picked Oregon to be here, and I think this is where their Cinderella run ends. I think that Tennessee's just too big, too fast, and too powerful, and too much of a team. And they don't really turn the ball over unless it's against Auburn in the SEC championship game final. I really think that Tennessee is going to beat the 12-seeded Oregon Ducks. Now, the last game that we're going to look at, 5-seed Auburn, 3-seed Houston. I think in this one, Auburn comes out on top strictly because that they'll play faster. Houston really likes to get into half-court sets, but I think that Auburn's going to play faster. They're going to make the Houston guys get up the floor, and they're going to sweat, and it's going to be, you're going to have to call a timeout 2 minutes into the game because you've already run 8 suicides. It's really not going to be fair if Auburn can make it this far, and I think that if they can get past North Carolina, they're going to ride all the way into the Final Four. Now let's look at the Final Four. We have Duke and Michigan and Tennessee and Auburn. We're going to start with this Duke and Michigan game, and I'm going to tell you what I really like about this game. I really like the battle that Zion Williamson is going to have with Michigan's bigs. I think that you have 3 or 4 guys for Michigan that can double-team Zion when he's in the paint, especially. I know that Zion, especially of recent, has been moving to the outside and getting more comfortable beyond the arc, shooting the three-pointer and taking more jump shots, as earlier in the season all we saw him do was dunk, rebound, and lay the ball in. But I really don't think that's going to matter. I think Michigan is going to upset Duke. And I say that as an upset, even though it's a 2-1. That's a big upset. You know, Duke was looked at as the top overall seed in this tournament. You know, they have the star group of freshmen in Zion Williamson, R.J. Barrett, Cam Reddish, Trey Jones, and their bench is pretty solid too, one of the best in the country in my opinion. But I think the lights of the Final Four in Minneapolis are just going to be too big for those freshmen. They're finally going to have that one slip-up that really matters. When Zion got hurt, they had a couple slip-ups. They went 3-3 during his 6-game absence, but that's regular season. All that really matters about the regular season is where you get placed in the ACC tournament, and they're Duke. It doesn't matter if they're a bottom seed or a top seed. They're going to be there when you're cutting down the nets for the tournament title. But I really don't see them being able to cut down the nets for the national tournament title. I think that Michigan really just goes in there and gives it to him and shows Krzyzewski something that he's never seen before. And that's a team that really plays complete basketball. They're going to play as a team. Everybody in the starting 5 is going to average, or is not going to average, they're going to put up 10 or more points. So I really see Michigan taking that one from Duke. Now we're going to scroll down to this Tennessee-Auburn game in a matchup of the SEC tournament final. And this is something that SEC fans just would love to see. They would love to see 2 of their teams in the Final Four. Now, Tennessee and Auburn. We saw during the regular season at the end, Auburn's 2-0 against Tennessee this year. In the end of the regular season, Auburn prevented Tennessee from winning their 2nd straight SEC regular season title. And then in the tournament game, everybody watched that. Auburn was running up and down the floor. I think it's going to be a little closer, but I do think that if Auburn were to play Tennessee, that Auburn would come out on top. Now, we're going to look at this championship game. Michigan and Auburn. It'd be an amazing game. It would be incredible to watch. The 2 offensive styles are very different. You know, both teams like to get out there and go fast, but Michigan has a lot of half-court sets that they like to run. But Auburn as a Cinderella and what Bruce Pearl has done for the Auburn community and getting the people behind that team is going to just, I think, propel them to a national championship. And I know that I'm kind of sounding like a homer here, but I am going to pick Auburn. I'm going to roll with it. We're going to see how that goes, and we're just going to roll along the bandwagon to hopefully a national championship. So those are my Sweet 16 and on picks. I hope you enjoyed. Now, coming up, we'll take a look at everything else going on out here on the Plains, including freshman diver Connor Pruitt making a splash at NCAAs. You're watching Sports Night in Auburn.
Home fire drills give your family a plan of action. In a home fire, you may have less than 2 minutes to get out. So when you drill, show everyone 2 ways out of the house, pick a safe meeting spot, and get there in under 2 minutes. Then practice home fire drills at least twice a year. You can even make them fun. So everyone knows the sound and exactly what to do when they hear a smoke alarm. Go to ready.gov/fire drill and learn how to prepare your family for home fires.
This is what high blood pressure looks like. Talk with your doctor to create a treatment plan that works for you. Go to loweryourhbp.org.
After 15 years of smoking, Eva Marie quit. There's a new lung cancer screening that could save her life. You stopped smoking. Now start screening. Learn more at savedbythescan.org.
Welcome back to Sports Night in Auburn. Now, we just spent a long time talking about the men's basketball team, so it's only fair that we give credit to the Auburn's women's basketball team, as they were able to qualify for the NCAA tournament.
The Tigers qualified for the third time in 4 years and were slated as the 10th seed in the Chicago region and faced 7-seeded BYU. The Tigers, however, did not get the result they so coveted, as they would fall to the Cougars despite Janiah McKay's 19 points and Unique Thompson's career-high 19 rebounds.
The Tigers would fall by a final of 73-64, but this one loss is nothing to take away from the Tigers, as they enjoyed yet another successful season under Coach Flo, who led the team to 22 wins thanks to strong senior play by players such as Janiah McKay and solid bench play from freshmen such as Robin Benton. The Tigers will regroup and head into the 2019-2020 season even stronger.
After the Tigers' 15-game winning streak was snapped by Mississippi State over the weekend and the Tigers fell to the Bulldogs 2-1 in the series, Auburn traveled to Montgomery to take on in-state rivals Alabama in the Capital City Classic.
Unlike the result from basketball season, the Tide would come out on top in this matchup, as after a 3-3 tie in the 8th inning, Alabama scored the go-ahead run on a wild pitch and put 2 more on base later in the frame. The loss was Auburn's second in the Classic and its first since 2014. The loss drops the 12th-ranked Tigers to 20-5 on the season. Auburn softball went to Starkville over the weekend to take on Mississippi State in a 3-game series.
The first game of the series did not go as the Tigers would have liked, as the Tigers fell by 1, but the next 2 games could not have gone better for Auburn, as they were able to finish the weekend with a series win by a combined score of 16-4 after the games that went into both extra innings and cut short to 5 innings.
The wins moved the Tigers to 28-5 on the season, and they currently sit at number 17 on the national poll. Auburn swim and dive will be well represented, as the NCAA championships are set to start on Thursday and will take place over the 3 ensuing days.
The Tigers had 11 total athletes qualify or be invited to compete at the event in Austin, Texas's Swimming Center, highlighted by freshman diver Connor Pruitt, who earned his way to the meet after 3 top 8 finishes at the Zone B Diving Championships.
On the swimming side, the Tigers have 18 swims across 12 events, with 6 invited swimmers and 4 relay alternates. Senior Liam McCloskey has the highest-ranked individual swim, coming in at number 6 in the 100-yard butterfly, while junior Santiago Grassi is slated 14 in the 50-yard freestyle. Auburn gymnastics look to close their season strong, as they headed to New Orleans to compete in the SEC Championships for a spot at the NCAA Championships.
Auburn came into the meet sitting at 12 in the national rankings. In the afternoon session of Saturday's SEC Championship, the Tigers posted a score of 196.375, placing them 6th overall.
Darian Goburn stole the show while making her debut in the conference championship this year, but you never would have guessed it, as she earned all SEC honors on vault and floor after finishing in the top 2 of both events in the afternoon session, posting a vault and floor score of 9.9. She was also named to the all-freshman team on both events.
Coming up, we'll take a look at everything going on this weekend on the Plains in your weekly calendar. Stay right here for Sports Night in Auburn.
things you've done with your bike, donating it to Goodwill may be the most incredible of all. Your donations help fund job placement and training for people in your community, which means your stuff can be more powerful than you think. Donate stuff, create jobs.
Green hat. Red hat. Oops. Red shirt. Blue shirt. Yellow shirt. Oops. Yellow pants. Red pants. Green pants. Oops.
I see you mobbing over her. Let's go. Let's mob. Let's crawl. Let's crawl. Let's crawl.
Get it.
Get it.
Get it.
Get it.
Get it.
Is she gonna get it, Daddy?
She'll get it. Get it. Get it.
When you bring home a Goodwill find, you give your whole town a reason to celebrate because you're also funding local job training and placement programs in tech, healthcare, and more. Goodwill. Bring good home.
Home fire drills give your family a plan of action. In a home fire, you may have less than 2 minutes to get out. So when you drill, show everyone 2 ways out of the house, pick a safe meeting spot, and get there in under 2 minutes. Then practice home fire drills at least twice a year. You can even make them fun. So everyone knows the sound and exactly what to do when they hear a smoke alarm. Go to ready.gov/fire drill and learn how to prepare your family for home fires.
Let's take a look at your week ahead in Auburn athletics.
Men's basketball faces the North Carolina Tar Heels in Kansas City. Tip-off is scheduled for 6:29 p.m. and can be seen on TBS.
Men's baseball will face off against South Carolina and in Columbia Friday evening to start their 3-game series.
On Thursday, men's swim and dive will be in Austin, Texas for the NCAA Championships. The event will last throughout the weekend.
Softball returns home to face the Georgia Bulldogs for a 3-game series. Game 1 will begin on Friday at 6 p.m.
Equestrian meets South Carolina and Auburn with the event to begin at 1:30 p.m.
On Friday, women's tennis hosts Tennessee at 2 p.m. at the Auburn Tennis Center.
Men's tennis travels to Tennessee on Friday with the match to start at 5 p.m. Men's tennis closes out the weekend as they travel to Athens to face Georgia on Sunday. The match is set to start at noon. Well, that's all we have for you tonight. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at EETV_sports and follow Eagle Eye TV on Instagram. And don't forget to check out our website, eagleeyeauburn.com. I'm Kennedy Gooden. And I'm Shelby Anderson. Thank you for joining us, and War Eagle.
It's my job to pay attention to the game, and I take my job seriously.
While I'm busy watching